behind the elegant facades and manicured gardens of the rehab center. A darker world, Polster world Claire was determined to expose. She had spent weeks weaving her false addiction story, earning the wary trust of staff and patients alike. But tonight was different. Tonight, she was no longer just a patient. She was a spy in the heart of a covert power game. The corridor smelled of polished wood and faint traces of cigar smoke, a scent Claire had come to associate with the high-stakes dealings of the rehab's elite. Her breath was shallow, controlled, as she eased the door open and slipped inside. A single bulb cast a warm golden glow over a vast room dominated by a long mahogany table. Around it sat the most influential residents, magnates, socialites, and shadowy operators who shaped the rehab's invisible hierarchy. Victor Langley, the tech mogul whose fortune was whispered to fund much of the rehab's operations, stood at the head of the table. His silver-streaked hair caught the light as he leaned forward, a predatory grin curling his lips. Beside him, Sasha Delacroix radiated confidence, her laughter like the chime of crystal glasses, masking the ruthless ambition beneath. Dr. Evelyn Hargrove maintained her usual austere composure, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of something darker as they scanned the room. Marcus Reed sat quietly, his presence like a coiled spring, ready to strike. Claire's gaze darted between them, noting the subtle power plays, the exchange of knowing glances, the slight shifts in posture, the carefully measured words. The rehab's luxurious veneer was a mask for manipulation and control. With these players pulling strings behind the scenes, Victor's booming laugh cut through the low murmur, his fingers drumming a slow rhythm on the polished table. "We control the narrative," he declared, voice rich with certainty. "Our investments ensure the center's success financially and politically. Patient outcomes are just data points, tools to be shaped." A chill ran down Claire's spine. This wasn't about healing, it was about profit and power. And her sister was caught somewhere in this web. Dr. Hargrove's gaze met Claire's across the room, a flash of recognition sparking before she turned away, her face a mask of professional detachment. The warning was clear. Claire's presence was no longer a secret. Heart racing, Claire retreated silently, retracing her steps through the shadowed corridor. The intel she had gathered was explosive, but now the stakes were higher than ever. The rehab's hidden empire would not tolerate a threat, and Claire's mission teetered on the edge of discovery. As she emerged back into the plush, deceptive calm of the rehab's public spaces, Claire steeled herself. The power game had deepened, and to win, she would have to play more dangerously than ever before. The night stretched before her, thick with secrets and peril. Somewhere in this controlled chaos lay the truth about her sister, a reckoning that could shatter the silk-smooth facade forever. Claire's lips pressed into a thin line. There was no turning back now. The game was on, and she was ready to gamble everything. Her hands trembled slightly, a tremor she fought to suppress, as the weight of unspoken truths pressed down on her chest like a suffocating silk shroud. The polished walls seemed to close in, the air thick with the mingled scents of expensive cologne and antiseptic. Around her, the other patients sat in a circle, their faces a blur of carefully curated expressions, each hiding their own battles beneath layers of tailored silk and practiced smiles. She had kept her story tight, her facade flawless for weeks now, but the cracks were beginning to show. The exhaustion gnawed at her edges, the constant vigilance demanded by her double life eroding the boundaries between the act and the woman beneath. Every glance from Dr. Evelyn Marks was a scalpel, every whispered conversation a potential landmine. Claire's mind raced, replaying every detail, every overheard secret, piecing together the puzzle that would lead her to her sister Raw, unravel her completely. "Claire," Dr. Marks's voice sliced through the haze, sharp and steady. "Would you care to share what's truly weighing on you today?" The room stilled, all eyes drawn to her. Claire's breath hitched. She forced herself upright, meeting the gaze of the woman who had become both her tormentor and unwitting ally. "I'm trying," Claire said, voice barely above a whisper, "but sometimes it feels like I'm drowning in silence." A murmur of understanding, or perhaps skepticism, rippled through the group. James Harrow shifted uneasily beside her, his usual confident mask faltering. "Silence can be the loudest noise," he remarked, his tone low but carrying weight. "Especially here." Claire nodded, grateful for the rare moment of solidarity but wary of the fragile alliances that could shatter at a whisper. The session spiraled into a maelstrom of confessions and accusations. The controlled chaos beneath the rehab's polished veneer laid bare. Claire's defenses, once steel-clad, began to crumble as memories and fears cascaded in torrents. Later that night, the solitude of her room offered no refuge. The hum of the building's security systems was a constant reminder of the cages they all inhabited. She pressed her palms to her temples, willing the relentless pounding behind her eyes to subside. A soft knock startled her. Myra slipped inside, eyes wide with concern. "You don't have to carry this alone," she whispered. Claire forced a smile, but the fissures in their fragile trust deepened. "Sometimes," Claire murmured, "the weight isn't meant to be shared." As dawn crept through the curtains, Claire wandered the manicured gardens, the cold air biting into her skin, grounding her in the present. The manicured hedges and pristine pathways seemed surreal, a stark contrast to the turmoil within. She questioned her reality, the lines between truth and deception blurring with every breath. The breaking point was near, and Claire knew that every step forward risked losing herself and the mission that had consumed her. But giving up was not an option. Not yet. The shadows of the rehab whispered their secrets, and Claire was determined to unearth them all, even if it meant shattering the fragile remnants of her sanity in the process. The game was far from over. If anything, it was just beginning. Evelyn Marlowe's office. The room itself was a study in cold elegance. Soft silk drapes muted the afternoon light, casting long shadows over the polished floors. The scent of leather-bound books mingled with the sterile tang of antiseptic, a deceptive balm over the tension that tightened Claire's chest. With a soft click, the panel gave way, revealing a small safe embedded in the wall. Her pulse quickened. This was the moment she had been edging towards since her arrival, uncovering the truth that had been buried beneath layers of deception and polished veneers. Claire crouched, pulling a slim stethoscope lockpick from her sleeve. Minutes stretched taut as the tumblers shifted under her deft touch. Finally, the door swung open to reveal a trove of documents, ledgers, transaction records, and sealed folders heavy with secrets. Her breath caught. The financial statements detailed exorbitant charges billed to anonymous clients, payments that far exceeded legitimate treatment costs. Each line item was a thread, weaving a dark tapestry of greed and control. But it was the files on specific patients that froze her blood. Names, dates, therapies administered, and outcomes that were disturbingly vague. There, scrawled in the margins of one folder, was her sister's name. Lena. Claire's mind raced. The rehab wasn't just a sanctuary for the wealthy to cleanse their addictions. It was a machine, a cold, efficient engine exploiting the vulnerable for profit and power. The psychological treatments were masks for manipulation, and the missing patients like Lena were pieces in a much larger, sinister game. Suddenly, the faint buzz of a phone shattered the silence. Panic surged through Claire. She hastily stuffed the files into her bag, but as she turned, the soft click of heels echoed from the hallway. "Looking for something, Claire?" Dr. Marlowe's voice was smooth, but the icy edge beneath it cut like a blade. Claire swallowed her fear, forcing a calm she didn't feel. "Just trying to understand this place." Dr. Marlowe's smile was thin, sharp. "Understanding comes at a price. Some truths are better left buried." Claire met her gaze, unwavering. "I'm done being in the dark." The tension between them crackled, a silent standoff beneath the opulent chandeliers. Then, footsteps approached, rapidly. Derek Caldwell, the security chief, his presence like a hammer of authority. "Dr. Marlowe, there's been a breach in the restricted wing," he reported curtly. Marlowe's eyes flicked to Claire, calculating. Seems the game's accelerating. Later, in the privacy of her room, Claire sifted through the files once more. A small velvet pouch slipped from between the papers, spilling its contents onto the bedspread. Among the scattered trinkets lay a delicate bracelet, a slender band of silver etched with tiny, intricate patterns. Her breath hitched. It was Lena's. Memories flooded back, childhood afternoons spent in sunlit gardens, laughter echoing through the air, promises whispered beneath the stars. The bracelet was a lifeline, a tangible connection in the shadowed maze of lies. But hope was a fragile thing here, easily shattered by the cold reality of the Rahab's cruelty. Claire knew the stakes had never been higher. The walls were closing in, and the forces guarding their secrets would stop at nothing to keep her silent. Yet, in that moment, clutching the bracelet, she steeled herself. The hidden truth had been uncovered, and with it, the path forward, perilous, uncertain, but finally illuminated. "This ends now," she whispered into the darkness, the weight of her resolve settling like steel in her veins. The game was no longer just about survival. It was about justice, and Claire was ready to play. As night deepened, shadows lengthened across the rehab's marble floors, the silk facades now irrevocably stained by the truths they concealed. Somewhere within those walls, Lena was waiting, and Claire would find her, no matter the cost. But first, she had to survive the storm she had unleashed. The clock ticked relentlessly, each second drawing her closer to a reckoning that would shatter illusions and expose the darkness beneath the silk. And Claire was ready to confront it. Yet nothing prepared her for the sting of betrayal from someone she considered an ally. The afternoon had started like any other, quiet, deceptively calm, the kind of lull that always made Claire uneasy. She sat in the lounge, the polished marble floor gleaming beneath the crystal chandeliers, the air scented faintly with lavender and disinfectant. Mara had joined her late, slipping in with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Something on your mind?" Claire asked, attempting casual, though the knot in her stomach tightened. Mara shrugged, her dark eyes flicking to the side. "Just the usual headaches. You know how it is here." Claire didn't believe it for a second. Mara's presence was always a double-edged sword, freeing information but exacting a price. She had been indispensable in Claire's early days within the rehab, providing insights into the power dynamics and the subtle manipulations that governed the elite residents. But lately, Mara had seemed distant, distracted. The moment came unexpectedly. Claire's gaze landed on Mara's phone, left unattended on the table during a rare moment of distraction. A notification blinked silently, a message preview that froze Claire's blood, report on subject Claire delivered, awaiting further instructions. Her breath caught. The message was unmistakable. Mara was feeding information to the rehab authorities betraying Claire's trust. The room seemed to close in around her, the chandeliers flickering as if in warning. She slipped the phone into her pocket with trembling hands, heart pounding with shock and disbelief. Later, Claire confronted Mara in the narrow hallway that led to the patient suites. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the sterile walls closing in like the walls of a cage. "Why, Mara?" Claire's voice was low but sharp, each word a dagger. Mara's cold smile returned, but it did little to mask the vulnerability beneath. "You think you can play this game alone? I'm just making sure I survive. You can't afford enemies here, Claire, by selling me out. I'm not your enemy, just pragmatic." The tension exploded, accusations and half-truths flying in the cramped space. Claire realized that trust was a currency more fragile than she'd imagined, and now she was bankrupt. Retreating to the rooftop at dusk, Claire stared out at the city skyline melting into twilight. The cool breeze bit at her skin, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside. The beauty of the fading light was cruel, mocking the darkness she'd uncovered. Alone, she wrestled with the weight of betrayal, the mission suddenly more perilous, but beneath the despair, a spark of resolve ignited. She would adapt, she would fight. Later, in the quiet sanctuary of the Rahab's library, Eli sat beside her, offering unspoken support. The soft rustle of pages was a fragile backdrop to their new alliance, forged in the crucible of secrecy and necessity. "We can't trust anyone too much," Eli said quietly, "but you don't have to do this alone." Claire nodded, the road ahead uncertain but no longer walked in isolation. Mara's betrayal had shattered the fragile trust, but it had also steeled Claire's determination. She would navigate the controlled chaos beneath the silk facades, uncover the truth, and protect what little remained of her fractured world. As night deepened, Claire's thoughts turned to the question gnawing at her: how to proceed when every ally might be a threat. The game had just changed, and she was ready to play it harder, smarter and deadlier. The shadows of the rehab were closing in, but Claire was far from defeated. The hunt for her sister and the truth was only just beginning. Claire moved with cautious precision, her footsteps muffled by the plush carpet of the staff wing corridor. She glanced over her shoulder once more before slipping into an unmarked door she had found earlier. Door that led to a stairwell descending deeper than any patient was supposed to go. A flickering emergency light cast jagged shadows against the cold stone walls of the stairwell. The air was damp and smelled faintly of mold mixed with antiseptic, a stark contrast to the scented candles and silk curtains that adorned the patient wings above. Claire's pulse quickened, each step downward, amplifying the weight of the unknown pressing in around her. From somewhere above, indistinct voices murmured, their tone low and urgent. She held her breath, pressing her back against the wall, listening. The muffled sound of footsteps echoed on the floor above, sending a jolt of panic through her. But she pushed forward, driven by an urgency that left no room for hesitation. At the bottom of the stairwell, a heavy metal door awaited, its surface scuffed and unadorned. Using the stolen keycard she had acquired from Lena's desk, Claire swiped it with trembling fingers. The lock clicked open, and she eased the door inward to reveal a sprawling basement room buzzing with low, mechanical hums. Rows of filing cabinets lined one side, their drawers stuffed with yellowed folders and manila envelopes. Opposite them, a bank of surveillance monitors blinked silently, each screen showing live feeds from hidden cameras scattered throughout the rehab. Papers, photographs, and cryptic letters were strewn across a large metal table in the center, illuminated by a single bare bulb dangling from the ceiling. Claire approached the table, her eyes scanning the documents. Names she recognized, dates that aligned with her sister Mara's last known whereabouts, financial records indicating illicit transactions, and notes detailing psychological experiments on patients under the guise of therapy. The depth of the Rahab's corruption sprawled before her like a dark tapestry, every thread revealing exploitation, control, and greed. Suddenly, a sharp metallic clang echoed from the stairwell behind her. Heart pounding, Claire grabbed a handful of files and darted toward the door, only to find it beginning to close on its own. Panic surged as footsteps thundered down the stairs. She slipped through just as the door shut behind her, the lock clicking into place again. The corridor was empty, but the distant wail of alarms shattered the silence. Bright red emergency lights flooding the hallways. Claire's breath came in ragged gasps as she sprinted, weaving through the labyrinthine corridors she had memorized over weeks. Her mind raced. How had they discovered her? Was Victor's warning too late? She rounded a corner and collided with him, his rugged face shadowed under the dim lights. "They're on to you," Victor hissed, eyes scanning the hallway. "You need to get out, now." Claire nodded, swallowing her fear. "What about my sister?" "We don't have time," he replied, pulling her toward a service exit. "But there's more to find. We'll get her. We have to." Together, they slipped into the night, the opulent rehab behind them, a fortress of secrets and lies. But Claire's resolve burned brighter than ever. She had descended into the depths of darkness, and now there was no turning back. The truth and her sister were somewhere in the shadows of this controlled chaos, and she would find them no matter the cost. As the sirens faded into the distance, Claire took a steadying breath. The descent had only just begun, and the stakes were higher than she could have imagined. But for the first time, she held a piece of the puzzle in her hands, and it was enough to keep moving forward. The night whispered promises of danger and revelation, and Claire was ready to face them all. The elegant silk curtains hung heavy, their silky folds whispering secrets she wished she could understand. She sat on the edge of the plush bed, fingers curled tightly around the edge of the mattress as the low drone of the air conditioning unit filled the silence. Her eyes darted to the corner where shadows gathered, darkening as the evening light waned. A faint murmur rose, barely audible at first, a susurration of voices that seemed to seep from the walls themselves. Claire blinked hard, trying to shake the growing unease that coiled within her. Nina, the name slipped from her lips like a prayer, a fragile tether to a sister she had lost to this place. But the voice that answered was not hers. It was distant, haunting, and laced with despair. Eyes wide, Claire forced herself to stand, the cold hardwood floor grounding her as the room spun. She reached for the silk scarf draped over a chair, the fabric smooth and cool beneath her fingers, a small comfort amid the growing chaos inside her mind. The boundaries between past and present, between memory and hallucination, began to dissolve. She saw Nina's face flicker before her eyes, radiant, fragile, a ghost trapped beneath layers of silk and lies. The next morning brought no relief. In the therapy room, Dr. Mallory sat across from her, expression unreadable behind rimless glasses. The polished oak table between them gleamed under the soft lighting, a barrier as much as a surface for dialogue. Claire Mallory's voice was even clinical, and somehow sharper than the sterile instruments that lined the shelves. "Your progress is concerning. Your emotional responses are inconsistent with your reported experiences." Claire's hands trembled beneath the table, fingers curling into fists as she fought to maintain her composure. "I'm dealing with a lot," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. Mallory's gaze held her steady, unblinking. "This isn't just about addiction, is it?" A flicker of defiance sparked within Claire. "I'm here for treatment," she said, voice firmer now. "Isn't that what matters?" But the seed of doubt had been planted, and Claire knew the walls were closing in. Later, as twilight bled through the expansive windows, Claire wandered the rehab's corridors. The thick carpet swallowed the sound of her heels, leaving her footsteps eerily muted. Laughter echoed distantly, some light, some bitter snippets of hushed arguments floated like ghosts in the air. The luxury surrounding her was a mask, a silken veil hiding the turmoil beneath. She pressed her back against the cool wall, inhaling the faint scent of expensive perfume mixed with antiseptic. Her mind spun tales from the fragments she gathered, each step deepening her paranoia. The line between ally and enemy blurred in the half-light, and Claire felt every shadow watching. A sudden voice broke the silence. "You're pushing too hard." Claire turned to see Eli emerging from the shadows, his face etched with desperation and warning. "This place, it's not what you think. You dig too deep, and it'll swallow you whole." His eyes, haunted yet pleading, locked with hers. "I've seen what happens to those who lose themselves here. Don't let it be you." The tension thickened, words hanging heavy between them like a storm on the horizon. Claire's breath hitched not just from fear, but from the relentless pull of her mission. She was on the edge, between sanity and madness, truth and deception. And as the walls whispered their secrets, Claire knew the next step could be her last. But surrender was not an option. Not yet. Her mind, fractured but fierce, clung to one unyielding hope: find Nina, find the truth, survive the edge of madness, and perhaps, just perhaps, break free. The night deepened, and with it, the shadows grew longer.